streets of Kenya had been smeared with blood of its own people as at last month in June. Most importantly, the Kenyan youth protested the financial bill brought in by President William Ruto, its chief executive. The bill, which actually enforced high taxes on commodities. The Ruto administration rode on the back of the pro-worker administrations to power, but began to fall back on its own promises, undertakings, and/or contracts, prompting the Kenyan youth-led protest movement, leaving Ruto fumbling for responses. On Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue, we take a look at the Kenyan tax protest and lessons as it is applicable in Nigeria. I have with me on the show, Pelumi Awe. How are you doing?
Glad to be here with you.
You will do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us across various social media platforms. Join us in the next phase of the show. Welcome back to the show. Pelumi, actually, before I ask what actually brought about the Kenyan tax, you agree that the cost of living has actually become costly for the living. Sure. Why did Nigeria adopt or replicate this quagmire, let me put it that way, from Kenya in Nigeria, when we also had various tax increments, charging from the electric tariff hike, food costs, just to name a few?
I think our government they're very careful as to how they make this happen here. We saw that when they brought in the cybersecurity levy, when they realized that Nigerians revolted, they were trying to revolt in a way that was going to lead to protest. What they had to do was to bring it down. So they're pretty much careful, and I think they have feelers to feel. The issue with Kenya, I know you're going to ask questions in regards to that, is that the government wasn't sensitive enough with how they communicate what they wanted to do. And what our government, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government, has done so far, I don't work for the government, but I could tell you that there seems to be a very good communication of policies. And when that happens, they seem to have spoken to the top people before they bring stuff on board. So imagine they want to bring about something in a particular neighborhood, for instance, they go to the kingmakers there, speak to them, tell them stuff before they then bring that thing on board. But that's not what Ruto did there before he brought this on board. So before now, they've been clamoring that they want things to get better, and now bringing more tax, and people had to revolt to say they don't want that anymore. Yeah.
So actually, he bypassed the people that matter.
Yeah, he did that.
Because I want to believe that there should be advisors, and these advisors were not carried along.
I don't think so.
Okay, might we recall that there was an increment in tax in Nigeria, which you just mentioned now, speaking side by side, juxtaposingly. Kenyan youths led this protest movement, leaving the Ruto administration fumbling for a particular response. Now, we could see the video there from the rampage, which was going on in the legislature, who are actually representing the people. We will say the Kenyan people, unlike the Nigerian people, lack the spine, or they have the spine and the tooth like the toothless bulldog to react, not to be cheap enough to accept palliatives.
Well, we saw that during NSAS, we saw how that Nigerians came out in their numbers to say they don't want this anymore. People react based on evidences. And when you kill one person, you need to kill more people. Because people want to die. They actually want to die for whatever cause they have. And you have to know that. You've seen people do that over the years. Nigerians truly have that. But just that we've seen that every time the government has decided, every time NLC made a call for a strike, you find that almost immediately the government calls them to a meeting. And so it's that being rare. There's a place of being, every government needs to operate on two levels. The reactive level and the level where you have to proact, where before something happens, you react.
Okay, I was coming to that. You may proceed with the explanation.
Yeah, so you react before things happen. You are able to sense. You have feelers. People have feelers. People drop hints about things. And when they drop hints like that, you need to be able to take the hint into consideration. You're able to connect dots, identify patterns, and then use that as a tool to engage. But if you did not react, what you can do is to react when it happens almost immediately. There's something called crisis management. And that's what some African countries don't know how to do. In fact, there are people who are paid to manage crisis. If in every system, in every government, there is a particular body, a system that is designed to be able to manage crisis. It involves the communication arm of the government there, security where they're able to, the security arm, people who are not just going to shoot or carry arms.
Or
They
probably
advise.
even hijack the whole thing.
So they're able to read. They're able to read the people, identify top guys, and then make it happen. Let me tell you something. So when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, something he did very well at the time he was campaigning was to go to the leaders of different groups, different places, to engage them in conversations. Even the people who did not like him, he went to them. And that for me, although I wasn't on that side a lot, I was just on the neutral part. But I saw the moves he was making, going to people who did not like him, bringing them on board, having conversations with them to see what they can actually do, why they should believe in his policies, promising them a lot. Those were critical moves that Ruto did not make. Should I tell you that Ruto has been in government for 10 years now? Not as the president, but as the vice president of Kenya.
So sorry to come in there now. Ruto has been there for 10 years. I want to believe their constitution actually dictates so.
Yes.
Now, should it be a case of he lacks experience to have known what his people actually want in response to this? And Tinubu, on his own part, within the space of 1 year, has actually paid attention to the T's and C's, the terms and conditions concerning an administration. Is it that Ruto lacks foresight when it comes to, you made mention of crisis management, when it comes to weighing the options now, thinking things through before they actually have this negative impact or effect on the people? Because as we speak now, people have died, whether we like it or not. Now, judging from the question of experience, now, will you place side by side Ruto being lily-livered and also Tinubu knowing which way to go and which steps to take?
According to stats from Kenya, has it that about 13 persons died and some more persons that were injured in that attack. And I think it's not a thing about experience. Ruto does have experience. He's been there for 10 years. He was vice president for 10 years. And then now he's been elected as a president. And he rode on the fact that he rode on the promises that could trigger the people to vote for him. Every politician knows what to do when they want to get their vote, and which is to ride on the pain of the people. Because the pain of the people, if you try to put yourself alongside the people when they are going through pain, the tendency is high that they will vote for you when it's time. And so Ruto did that and won their hearts anyway. But the fact is, trying to impose things on the people without having conversation, it's a stick and carrot thing. You want people to yield to you. I was speaking to somebody 2 days ago. I said there's a rule in a relationship. It's called deposit before you withdraw. You cannot withdraw without depositing. If you don't deposit to the people...
Let me come in from your financial background now. It's a case of trading, and for you to trade, you must deposit on finance.
Definitely.
And for the withdrawal to take place, there must be a profit.
Definitely.
Okay.
It could be emotional. It could be emotional deposit. It could be to say you give them palliatives. You could say to make things happen for the people. So I'm saying that give the traders there, for instance, tax holiday. They shouldn't pay tax for about any company who has been able to meet a particular amount in terms of, or employ a particular number of persons will not pay tax. And that increases employment. But there's a way you can increase tax without affecting the people.
How conversant now is the government with this?
I don't think he knows a lot about this. And again, but we are in a country where it looks like, if I look at the list of the names of the people on our list, in terms of people leading, you have the special advisor to the president in terms of economic matters, Dr. Toko Fashua, been around for a long time. And given that I know him to an extent, I know he's a very knowledgeable person. And looking at the caliber of persons that the president brought on board in this administration, you can already tell that he knows what he's doing. I do not think the Kenyan government understands this enough.
So that means, based on ministerial appointment now in the FEC now for Nigeria, it therefore means that the Kenyan government actually lacked the right technocrats to execute this.
I think they do. But again, when he was given his report to the world, because the world started questioning, why would you engage the force to kill people and all of that? He said that the security agencies gave him a force. They gave him some details that were not complete, were not totally true. And that speaks a lot about I mentioned about communication again. You cannot manage crisis if you don't have a good system of communication. I give you this example. So there was a time an MC was, I'm an MC at MC event. An MC was on stage. This story was said by Ellen Paul, Dr. Ellen Paul. She went with one of her mentors to an event, and then he was on stage. He was MC. Some people were traveling from, I think, Abuja to Lagos, and they were in an accident. They were in an accident. And immediately they told, because he had earpiece, they told him. So he heard when they were discussing about it, that some people had jumped into persons coming and died. As he was about to, he was in the middle of an event, a particular activity. As he was about to say it into the microphone that we're sorry that this, they controlled him from the room. Don't say it. Chill. Go on with the event. If he had said that there, what would have happened was that it kills the morale of the event.
Not just the morale. Won't you agree with me that there will be this altering cohesion, instead friction setting in?
Definitely, definitely. So communication is important in managing crisis, and that for me is something that the Kenyan government lacks.
Okay, after this stunning success by its people, particularly the youth, to enforce this $2.7 billion tax, will you agree that just like the Jerry Rawlings era of Ghana, where he had to scrape out this ingrained corruption, Nigeria should learn its lesson from Ghana of the 1950s, 60s independence period, up until when Jerry Rawlings came on board, likewise Kenya?
The way to go before protest is dialogue. So I bring you on board. We have conversation.
Okay.
And I say, this is what I want. This is what people want. You say, no, this is what I want to offer you. And we say, no, we're not going to do this. Just like we did we're still on the minimum wage issue. We say, we're not going to do this. Okay, we want this. We're not going to do this. Let's go on strike. So protest is not legitimate until there has been negotiation.
After steps have been followed.
You cannot say, we no go agree. What have you done before now? That's your back. Even in court, protest is not legitimate until negotiation has taken place. So you have had dialogue. And the reason you're going to go on that you're going to protest is because you feel that the person you're speaking to does not have you in mind. It's not a 50-50 deal. And that's why you want to go that way.
Okay, sorry to cut you short. Now, if we remember during the introduction of the show, you remember the Ruto administration went back on its promises and contracts that signed to fulfill some agreements.
Definitely.
Now, it so happened now that despite not fulfilling those agreements now, will you agree that Ruto had some selfish agreements? Why? Because when we look at it, once there's a tax increment, there's a World Bank loan coming in or some IMF loan coming in. How are all these intertwined?
Well, when there are ways to raise, the way to raise money in any country, to be very clear with you, is that you either raise taxes, okay? You raise taxes. Or what you do if you want to raise money is that you go to the central bank of your country and tell the central bank of your country to bring down the interest rate down. When they bring down the interest rates, also people will come in and invest in your country. People now have more jobs and they can now pay tax to the government. Something else to also do is to sell bonds and securities to the people. What the Ruto government has done, or what they considered, was because, do you know that if you ask anybody who is in Kenya at the moment, if you know the cost of getting foodstuffs in Kenya, it's a lot. People are suffering in Kenya.
So that means Nigeria is midway between hell and heaven.
I'm telling you, people are suffering in Kenya. And the government says that the only way it can raise money is to raise taxes. But when you raise
a situation whereby not just Nigerian leaders here or Kenyan leaders here, a situation whereby African leaders mismanage their economies and citizens are left to bear the brunt of reckless domestic and inflation loans, where these taxes increases, what will you suggest?
Okay, so everyone...
That's the reason I asked this question.
Everyone seems to come on board with their own ideas, believing that they can do it better than the person who was there, and then get there, say, we didn't know that it was as messy as this. The point is a clear plan has to be devised by every government. And this is something that African leaders have to learn again and again, that the people are the ones who put you there. If they want to, if you kill one person, you will kill more. If you say, look at Ensa's protest, look at how it escalated. If you kill one person, you're going to kill more. People want intelligent conversation. Engage the people. Tell them. But the point is, like I said, if you don't deposit, you can't withdraw. Now, if you withdraw without deposit, you only bring about stress. It's called stress. In every relationship, international relationship, relations, country to country, if you tend to always withdraw. Do you know Kenya still owes China even to date? They owe China. In fact, on Market Square, I was speaking about Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio. And I mentioned how that Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio just crossed 50% and we're crying. Ghana's debt to GDP ratio is over 80%. And the higher your debt to GDP ratio, the less likely it is you have the money to pay. It means that it will be more difficult for you to pay back.
So let me get this straight. It therefore means that there's going to be a dependence on either world powers or global bodies.
You will get into what I call debt slavery, where the your financier, your lender.
You're practically in financial chains.
your financier, your lender will begin to suggest to you. And the World Bank is doing it to Nigeria at the moment. Because every time they want to borrow your money, there's a clause that you have to listen to us because they want their money back. That's the only way you can even get more from them. So Kenya is at that point now where they're in a lot of debt. People are suffering, people are starving. And when there's a way you push the people. I know when with this cybersecurity levy, and I told you that the government is pushing the people. If they don't withdraw this thing, people are going to revolt. And they held on to it. They had to withdraw it. Because if you push the people, there's a point where you put the people, Yoruba will say, I don't know if it's the Igbos or Yoruba, say, there's a way you chase the goat. And when the goat gets to the wall, turns towards you. Say, oh yeah, today not today. Today not today. So the government in China, in Kenya, pushed the people, and then not just pushing the people, what they did was they did identify their leaders, send soldiers to them to deal with them, and then kill 13 people and injured many persons. And then it escalated. Now the people started jubilating. Why did they start jubilating? Because the government withdrew that. If you check the China the Kenyan website, government website, you must have seen the long list of taxes that they impose on the people to pay. People that don't have money, you want to strangle them. And this is a lesson for every African leader out there that, see, the people put you there. And the day they choose to revolt against you, you have on the screen, you see people shouting there. The day they choose to revolt against you, you'll be in trouble. So the people have to be, first thing is dialogue has to happen. Some consideration, some consulting has to take place before you can do anything like that. And that's a lesson I think every African leader has learned.
Well, we've heard it all from Pelumi Awe, and he's been coming from the economic perspective. But politically speaking, I feel leaders should actually be kicked out from the election day and technocrats properly brought in. Now, conclusively speaking on Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue, I will say in sum total, African leaders should initiate and speed up implementing homegrown policies to grow their economies and quit acceding to international financial agencies to find themselves in financial chains at the detriment of their citizens. I'm Odiawa AI, and the show has been Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. Thanks for watching.